morning and welcome to Morning Movie News. Now, it sure has been snowing a lot here on the East Coast, but over on the West Coast, at least on Friday, there was a flurry of casting announcements. So many that we're able to fill today's entire Morning Movie News episode discussing them. And the first one has to do with the Deadpool movie over at Fox, which is quickly taking shape as it marches towards its 2016 release date. Now, also last week, Ryan Reynolds released a photo of him teasing the Deadpool mask, which was very exciting in and of itself because it seemed to confirm that at least part of the movie will be shot live action, whereas the test footage, which is largely responsible for this film finally getting greenlit, was entirely CGI. But as I said, this is an episode discussing casting announcements, and with the Deadpool film, we actually have two. We have an official casting announcement and kind of a casting question mark. But let's start out with that official announcement, and that's that Gina Carano is joining the film as the mutant Angel Dust. Now, it had seemed that Gina Carano had been KO'd in Hollywood and replaced by Ronda Rousey, and Rousey has a very impressive slate of movies on the horizon. She's in Furious 7 with a kick-ass fight scene with Michelle Rodriguez, and then of course she's also in the Entourage movie where she has lines, and she actually seems to be pretty good at delivering them, which we all know is Gina Carano's kryptonite when it came to appearing in movies. But just ask Gina Carano's fans, she's not defeated so easily, and she's still on the board with this Deadpool movie. Now, Angel Dust is, again, as I said, a mutant, and her power set is that she can temporarily increase her strength to superhuman levels by increasing her adrenaline. And when she does that, she gets black lines on her face. Also, apparently, at least from the artwork I've seen, her eyes seem to glow a little bit, or she at least has a really intense stare. And Gina Carano is pretty good at having an intense stare. She's also very good at fight sequences. It's the best thing in Haywire, that Steven Soderbergh action movie he made with Carano. And, it was admirable that Steven Soderbergh wanted to make an action movie with a female lead who could actually fight, but then again, Carano's acting was just, unfortunately quite poor. We'll see how she does, though, in a Deadpool movie, and I think one of the big questions is whether or not Deadpool would comment on her lack of ability to act. I don't know how he can, and it would, if Gina Carano is willing to go along with it, and I think at this point she should, considering it's no secret, it could be quite funny, and, Deadpool, of course, always breaks the fourth wall. And he could also, though, acknowledge in a positive sense that Gina Carano is bringing the beat down to the movie, which is her strong suit. Pun intended. Because again, as I said, Carano is very good at these fight sequences. She also happens to look like the Angel Dust character has been illustrated in the past. Now also something interesting about Angel Dust is a member of the Morlocks. That's the underground group of mutants that aren't so pretty and have to hide from public view, and they have a resentment, therefore, towards the X-Men, the pretty mutants, who are able to be seen and get appreciation for their powers, and etc., etc. So the question here is whether or not Angel Dust is just being borrowed from the Morlocks and put in the Deadpool world, or if Deadpool is perhaps a Morlock, which would kind of make sense because he also has a lot of problems, with his appearance, as any Deadpool fan knows, and so he could kind of fit into that setup. Now that would be a huge break in continuity because he's supposed to come from the Weapon X program, which they kind of hinted at, well, they didn't hint at, but they butchered, I guess you could say, in the X-Men Origins Wolverine movie. But still, it would be a very big break from continuity, but it would be a way to bring the Morlocks in, and as we all know from the Fox X-Men movies, they're not too worried about staying true to the comics. Something that differs from how Marvel's been approaching their movies. But so far, while X-Men had a momentary setback when Bryan Singer was there, so far making up their own history and timelines has worked out quite well for the X-Men films. Now, what's that casting question mark I noted? Well, that's that Colossus is going to also appear in the film, apparently in a large capacity. And the casting question mark there is whether or not they'll keep Daniel Cudmore or they'll recast the role. Now, I think they'll probably keep Daniel Cudmore because they had him featured even recently in X-Men Days of Future Past. So I think he and Bryan Singer must have a good relationship, at least a good professional working relationship, and Singer clearly doesn't want to get rid of him. I, however, wish they would recast, because for the few scenes that Cudmore has had, I've never watched Daniel Cudmore as Colossus and been like, man, give that guy more to do. I'm always like, what a waste of Colossus. It also bothers me that Colossus does not have a Russian accent. He's supposed to say, like, it's not kind of like, he's the Russian mutant to Gambit's Cajun mutant. They're supposed to throw in a little bit of foreign language now and then to kind of give the thing some flavor. So I really miss that aspect of Colossus, and also him being an artist. They touched on that a little bit in the X-Men movies, but it's such a great character, beloved by so many, it's really just a shame to see him not get his due on screen. But get in line, Colossus. You're somewhere there, back there behind Cyclops and Storm. So I'm curious to what you guys think. Would you want Daniel Cudmore back, or do you think they should recast? But then again, this is going to be the Ryan Reynolds show, and they just need people for him to interact with. And again, though, I would like to see if maybe he would not only comment about Carano's lack of acting, but also potentially Cudmore's lack of acting. But we'll see if those actors are willing to go along with that. All right, so that's the first story of the day. Now, the second story of the day has to do with the Assassin's Creed movie that Michael Fassbender is putting together, and there has been a casting announcement there as well. And that's that he's brought Marion Cotillard on board, fellow Oscar nominee. Well, she's actually Oscar winner, of course, for La Vie en Rose. And if you haven't seen La Vie en Rose, I highly recommend you check that movie out. It's super long. Be prepared what you're getting yourself into. Give yourself a big block of time to watch it, but it's really stunning. And I think to date it is still her best performance. And you'll totally see why she won the Oscar and why she's still, I think, to some degree, riding the coattails of that performance in Hollywood. You need further evidence? Just look at her poor performance in The Dark Knight Rises and why it's a little hard to get excited about her here because of how she dropped the ball over in that genre film. But she's going to appear here. Her role exactly has not been revealed, but it has been said that the idea is to keep her on board for future films should the Assassin's Creed movies become a franchise, for Michael Fassbender and Marion Cotillard to kind of be the stars of this franchise, which is a very interesting choice. It also is it's worth noting that they're not only co-starring in the upcoming Macbeth, but that Michael Fassbender already brought the director over from that film as well. I have his name here, Justin Kurzel. So it's really bringing back that whole Macbeth team to make a very different type of movie, video game adaptation. However, they're also all represented by CAA. So there's either loyalty going on with Fassbender, and he had such a great experience making Macbeth, or maybe because he's producing this film and largely spearheading it, he's getting some advice from his CAA representatives, and they're saying, why not bring these people in as well. And I am curious to see how Michael Fassbender does as a producer and how much he's learned from his experience making the X-Men movies. But I'm curious, do you think that Marion Cotillard is a good fit for the Assassin's Creed universe? And do you think that this is shaping up the way you would like a video game movie to shape up? There's some, the video game movies have been around before comic book movies largely. They've been moderately successful, but they've never had the prestige casting that the comic book movies have gotten so much mileage out of. So I think that's what's trying to be accomplished here. We'll see how it pays off. Literally at the box office, and also if it can get good reviews. If they can manage to get this Assassin's Creed movie well reviewed, that'd be fantastic. Then just take a look at Seventh Son, which features an Oscar winner, Jeff Bridges, and multi-Oscar nominee, Julianne Moore, and not only did that not get well received, it's doing pretty well at the overseas box office, but I can tell you, as having seen it myself, it didn't turn out that great, even though the talent involved was quite impressive. All right, so that's the second casting announcement of the day. Now, the third one is not official. It's someone being considered for the role, and they might finally cast Rick Flagg in Suicide Squad. Now, they've been really trying hard to recast this role ever since Tom Hardy dropped out over, it's rumored to be, problems with the script, which David Ayer was still putting together when he cast the movie. So Tom Hardy took a look at the way it was developing and said, you know what, peace out. Now, they tried to replace him with Jake Gyllenhaal, but he said no as well, even though he has a prior relationship with David Ayer from End of Watch. So I think that's troubling. And they also, had a couple other people in mind. Joel Edgerton's name was brought up, but it looks like they might be settling on Joel Kinnaman, another Joel. I wanted to make sure I didn't get that wrong. I was like, both named Joel? Yep, both named Joel. Joel Kinnaman, I think this is, I feel both positive and negative about this potential casting. On the positive side, Joel Kinnaman can be quite charming, and I really loved him in The Killing. Like most of the United States and the world, this is where he was discovered. He, of course, comes from the Swedish film Easy Money, but this was this big breakout role on AMC's The Killing, and it's led to him getting a couple of movie roles. He's in the upcoming Run All Night opposite Liam Neeson, but of course his biggest role to date was landing the RoboCop remake. He was pretty good in that role, but still he's associated with that type of movie, and that's where my concern lies. Even though I know he's a talented individual, he might be tainted at this point, and it's kind of, I think, shifting the power balance the image of the film Suicide Squad. Because think about it. You've got Will Smith, Margot Robbie, and Jared Leto. Very prestigious group of actors right there. Seems like an A-list type of movie, right? But then on the other side, you have Jai Courtney, the model Cara Delevingne turned actress, and now Joel Kinnaman. That's a very different type of B-picture movie. That's like what video game movies have been like to date so far. And then in the middle, you have Viola Davis as Amanda Waller. Now, while I think she's wonderfully cast, you have to realize, I think, that at this point she's become something of a TV star. And so that also might shift the balance a little bit in the not so prestigious picture. So you have a movie that started out with its casting that seemed like it was really bringing its A game. It was perhaps even more potent than Justice League, to something that when everything settled down, might be leaning more towards a video game movie like the old school kind than the more prestigious comic book movies that studios are trying to make right now. So I'm curious to what you think. Do you think that Joel Kinnaman is just great? And do you think he's going to be a perfect addition to this cast? Do you agree with me, though, that he might be tipping it in the direction of, mediocre? And then also, why do you think it's so difficult to cast this role of Rick Flagg? What's wrong with it? For all the attention that Suicide Squad has gotten, it's very hot online, especially, by that I mean with the fan base. It's hotly anticipated. Why does no actor want to be involved in this picture? What's wrong with it? All right, so those are the 3 stories of the day. Now I have a viewer question, and I think my answer to it might surprise some people, because I'm sure some of you right now are typing, Grace, why do you hate DC so much? Oh, it's so annoying. So let's go to the question, and again, my surprising answer. Now it comes from Rabia Khan, and Rabia Khan says, Hi Grace, I love your show, and I watch it every day coming home from school. Thank you, Rabia. I hope you had a great day at school today. And Rabia says, I have a question, and even though it may be a little premature, I hope you can still answer it. Which film will perform better at the box office? Captain America: Civil War or Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice? Marvel is incredibly popular at the moment, but Batman and Superman have been iconic for decades. Love to hear your thoughts and best wishes from Canada, Rabia. Great question. Not too early to discuss because this is a really strong issue. This is the matchup. Forget the matchups in the movies themselves. It's Marvel versus DC, where they finally seem to be on equal footing. And perhaps this is why, now that I think about it, and thanks to Rabia, why Kevin Feige fought so hard to get Spider-Man for this movie. Because that's the one thing that I think could potentially push Marvel out in front. But I think that my gut feeling here is that Batman v Superman will be the bigger film. It opens earlier. It opens in March. So it has a very long, basically a month and a half at least to get out ahead of, Captain America: Civil War. And I think that people have been hotly anticipating this movie, Batman v Superman, for years. They have with Captain America: The Winter Soldier as well, but there have been Marvel movies leading up to that. People's Marvel itch has been scratched, but there has been nothing from DC since Man of Steel. So you have all this pent-up anticipation for a movie that I think is going to feature some amazing fight sequences. And so even if the story is a problem, I think that Zack Snyder, and this is quite brilliant as I've stated before, is going to pack this movie with so many amazing action sequences that people will go just to see that, and potentially multiple times. Because you're going to have all the bells and whistles, and people are going to want to see something like that on the big screen. So I think that my guess would be that would be the bigger movie. And I think Kevin Feige might be aware of that as well, which is, again, why he looped in Spider-Man. Now, someone might say, well, he did get Spider-Man, so end of discussion. Captain America: Civil War will win. But I'm still not sure, because I don't know how the general public will react to seeing Spider-Man with the Avengers. I think that the comic book fan, of course, is very excited about it. But I think that your mainstream viewer is going to think it's a step too far. I've asked a few that I happen to know in my personal life, and they've said, what is this? This is like a zoo. It's ridiculous. And I think there is some Spider-Man fatigue because the character's been, already, recycled twice. And especially if you're doing Peter Parker again in high school, I think there is, as I said, Spider-Man Peter Parker fatigue. So I think that audiences are going to, have a little bit, maybe potentially of a bad reaction to that, and that could hurt people's reaction to Captain America: Civil War, and maybe make it something they don't see multiple times. I'm sure the curiosity factor will get most people in there once, but these movies only make the kind of money they do from multiple viewings. People going to see it several times. And so you have kind of like a situation where both these stories could be a problem, but the cherry on top, which is supposed to be Spider-Man, could end up hurting that Sunday, where the sprinkles over on the Batman v Superman movie, which is a ton of awesome fight sequences, which we know Zack Snyder can deliver, might, end up pushing that into the upper echelons of box office grosses, even though there the story might not work. So I'm curious, what do you guys think as these movies continue to take shape? Which is the bigger gimmick? Which is the bigger thing to get you into the theater and to see the movie multiple times? Batman fighting Superman, and also potential fights like Carrie Kelly Robin joining in? Or is it Spider-Man finally swinging alongside the Avengers? And also, do you agree with me that while comic book fans would be excited about this, that your average moviegoer, the person who doesn't read comics, and that is the majority of people who see these movies, by the way, because comic books aren't read by that many people currently, do you think that they'll be as excited about this, or do you think they'll be like, whoa, step too far, a little too meta? I'm having trouble getting into this to introduce a character like this. You can introduce characters all the time, but this is a character that I already know that it's existed for like over a decade outside of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So you're not growing a character up from the ground floor, you're bringing them in from the side, and that could potentially not work out. So thank you so much for your question, Rubia. I hope you enjoyed my answer, and I'm looking forward to everybody's comments on it down below. Also, let me know what you thought of today's top 3 stories, anything you'd like to see covered tomorrow, and any questions that you might have. Thanks for watching. Bye.